Everyone's top 10 list looks the same. Is that a bad thing? Probably not. But you're probably tired of it. And if you are tired of it, you're in the right place because all the popular titles you always see populating everybody's top 10 lists will be nowhere to be found because I have not read them yet. There's a part of me that refuses to read what is popular. So consequently, my top 10 lists will have maybe some books you haven't heard of before, some hidden gems that you have yet to stumble across. I don't have decades of sci-fi reading experience. I'm still very much wet behind the ears, but I think there'll be some good books to add to your TBR. So here are my top 10 favorite works of science fiction in the year 2025, in the year of our Lord. And it's booktube, so of course there's going to be some honorable mentions. You gotta mention them, it's the law. And of course it doesn't need to be said, but I'll say it anyway. This is my subjective list. I'm a human being. I cannot rate anything objectively. That's not to say that some books on this list aren't better than others. I just don't know how to rate them. I'm imperfect. So if you disagree with my list, tough. I'm joking. But if you don't like my list, perhaps you could drop your top 5 favorite works of science fiction in the comments below so I have some books to add to my TBR and maybe recommend to me some books I might like depending on what I talk about today. Let's get to it. The first honorable mention is Electric Forest by Tanith Lee. This book takes place in a futuristic society where one's appearance and attractiveness is tied to one's class and social status. Our protagonist is a young woman who is disformed, handicapped, and hideous. She is a social pariah with no friends and seemingly no reason to live. But everything changes when she's offered the deal of a lifetime. In return for receiving a new, beautiful, perfect body, she has to do some spy work on some powerful individuals in society. This book put me in a very introspective mood, and the character arc of our protagonist is compelling to say the least. Tanith Lee did a very good job at depicting how being a social outcast causes you to grow into a very unique person. In some ways, that's good, and in some ways, that's bad. So now that our protagonist has a new, beautiful body, she starts to change drastically. It was entertaining to watch the story unfold as the plot gets more and more complicated. It takes twists and turns. You know how it goes. There was plenty of plot twists, and it was very engaging. And I love the way that Tanith Lee was able to make the climax of this story so compelling, so introspective. It made the journey really worth it. I love the characterization. Tanith Lee, if you're not reading her works, you're missing out. She was a true genius. She was gone too soon. And you gotta respect an author who could have been a lot more popular if she chose to write the books that would have made her more known. This book is beautifully written, and Tanith Lee does a very good job at constantly raising the stakes as the plot grows more and more complicated. Next, we have A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. This book takes place in the future, where mankind has reconnected with nature and left much of their technological developments behind, including mainly the robots they created that they freed several generations before the start of this story. We follow a monk who's suffering through major burnout, who goes on this adventure to find meaning in life and encounters a wild robot. My favorite part of the story is the dynamic between our two main characters. I love seeing how the robots have developed and evolved during their time away from humans, how they develop personalities and culture and traditions. It was very interesting. This is a story about slowing down and trying to find meaning in life and doing what makes you happy. And Becky Chambers painted a very optimistic view of what the future could be like. Will we get the future that this book depicts? Almost most certainly not, but one could hope. Honorable mention number 3 is Farewell Earth's Bliss by D.G. Compton. Do you ever look at the stars and wonder what could be out there? That perhaps there's planets, different places that humankind can settle? Well, guess what? If we could travel to distant planets, it would be a very terrifying experience, and you probably wouldn't want to go on the journey in the first place. I mean, Earth has its issues, but at least it's not a dark, terrible void. And I think if we were to colonize near planets, it would probably look something like this book, and that should terrify you. This book takes place on Mars, but it's not what you think. It's a penal colony. They send all of humanity's rejects, the pariahs, the criminals, and they send them to Mars to colonize it. And as you can imagine, the society is terrible. You would not want to live there, but these people have no choice. What follows is a very interesting story about religious fundamentalism, fanaticism, corruption, this culture This society is just terrifying to behold. And D.G. Compton wrote a book. You could tell this book is over 50 years old because let me tell you, there is some triggering words in this book, lots of racially insensitive language that did not bug me, but it might bug you, so perhaps steer clear of this book if you don't like that. This book will make you think that we have no business colonizing the stars. And upon completing this story, I thought to myself, yeah, we're never getting off this planet we call home because the other options don't look so good. The final honorable mention is Elder Race by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This is just such a charming little novella. It follows two protagonists, an anthropologist from a futuristic society and a princess from a medieval society. I want you to think Star Trek combined with The Frugal Wizard's Guide to Surviving Medieval England, but not very cheesy. I loved the miscommunications in this book because these people come from very different worlds. They can't even understand each other's societies, but they're forced on this adventure, and the miscommunications are my favorite part. Seeing how different humans are in a futuristic society as compared to a medieval society, and seeing how, despite our differences, we're all human. We get to see how our futuristic anthropologist tries to help the people on this planet in a way that does not affect their technological development. That's where the Star Trek-like themes come in. This novella does a very good job at depicting how science, to those that are uneducated, looks very much like magic. It's a classic trope, it's a classic theme to talk about in science fiction, but Tchaikovsky tackles it in such a compelling, engaging way in this novella, and I just absolutely adored this story. Now that the honorable mentions are out of the way, let's jump into the top 10. First, we have Scythe by Neil Shusterman. I know this is a basic pick, but it's one of my favorite YA stories of all time. It takes place in a futuristic utopia that is governed by an all-powerful, all-knowing, benevolent AI. The only thing outside of the control of the AI, which is called the Thunderhead in this series, is the power over life and death. Death is handled by the Scythedom, a group of hooded individuals who have the power to kill people permanently in a world where death is often temporary. This book follows two scythe apprentices on their journey to obtain their robes and become full-fledged scythes. My favorite part of this book and this series is the philosophical themes and the way that Schusterman talks about morality and religion and philosophy in a way that is balanced and not preachy. He really did a good job at walking that tightrope. I love how every chapter of this book opens up with an excerpt from a journal from one of the scythes or from thoughts from the Thunderhead itself. It really helped me get immersed in the story. I'm not sure if it's just me, but this book made me think about how perhaps a future that is governed by AI won't be some dystopian Terminator apocalypse. Perhaps it'll be a good thing. Will we get that timeline? Probably not, but it's something to think about. Scythe is the first book in a trilogy. I don't think the sequels are nearly as good, but this takes the number 10 spot. At the number 9 spot, we have Dispel Illusion by Mark Lawrence, the third and final installment in his Impossible Times trilogy, which is just a very fun, engaging, time travel sci-fi thriller that follows a group of friends across the years. Every subsequent installment in this series gets better and better. Dispel Illusion was a perfect ending to a great trilogy. These books are just dripping with nostalgia and teenage angst and depressing things that constantly happen. These kids go through the thick of it. They go through traumatic experiences. The first book opens up in the first page with our main character getting a terminal cancer diagnosis. Throw some time travel into the adventure, and you have a very engaging, cathartic, bittersweet story of love and loss and time travel. I absolutely adore this series, and Dispel Illusion is the strongest of the bunch. Time travel is very difficult to get right, but I think Mark Lawrence really stuck the landing. Time travel is notoriously difficult to get done, but Mark Lawrence was able to depict it and explain it in a way that is both understandable and approachable and consistent. It doesn't get you mired down in all the details. I love Dispel Illusion so much because Mark Lawrence was able to tie off so many loose ends in a very short amount of time, and he concluded this series in a very admirable way. Mark Lawrence is one of my most read authors. I've read 4 of his trilogies, 12 of his books, and this series is my favorite. At the number 8 spot, we have Shards of Earth by Adrian Tchaikovsky, the first installment in his final architecture trilogy. I read this book several months ago, along with Jimmy from Chatting with Nuts. This book was pitched to us as Mass Effect in novel form. Was it Mass Effect? Not quite, but it was an epic, thrilling space opera adventure against long odds. It features a motley crew. Everyone is from very different backgrounds. They're different alien species, and Tchaikovsky does a very good job at just depicting alien life forms. He does a very good job at building cultures and showing and depicting how different their way of lives are. There's plenty of tension amongst the crew, and there's a lot of intergalactic politics going on behind the scenes. It's a little hard to follow until about the halfway point of the book. Adrian Tchaikovsky is doing a lot of heavy lifting with this first installment in the series. There's a lot of world building, there's a lot of exposition, but once you get the hang of it, this book is a real joy to get through. The antagonists of this book were absolutely terrifying. There's some cosmic horror elements. The monsters in this story are planet-sized colossuses that we are incapable of understanding. And we don't know what they're doing. We don't even know if they recognize the other species in the universe as creatures worthy of being recognized. And that's terrifying. It makes you feel like a speck of sand just floating in the wind. And Tchaikovsky does a very good job at building tension and terror as our characters are in conflict with these monsters. I adored it. Perhaps this book will be knocked off the list next year when I complete the series, but I'm very optimistic to see what Adrian Tchaikovsky has in store. Next, we have For a Breath I Tarry by Roger Zelazny. What does it mean to be human? What makes us human? What is the purpose of life? Well, this novella will make you ask all those questions. This book tells the story of an isolated machine that exists by itself in a world that has moved on. Humanity has gone extinct, but our protagonist is obsessed with human culture. He wants to understand humans, and it wants to become human. What follows is a journey of becoming, and it makes you wonder if you really could create humans from scratch. Did we evolve into becoming humans? Were we put here? Who knows? But Roger Zelazny tackles this plot in a way that will make you introspective, that'll make you think about what makes us us. It's a trope that's been done to death in science fiction, but I love the way Zelazny was able to pull it off. He's a hit or miss author for me, but he really hit it out of the park with this novella. And you could read this in 3 to 4 hours tops. At the number 6 spot, we have Martha Wells' Exit Strategy. Murderbot is all the rage nowadays. We just got an Apple TV adaptation, which was wonderful. And Exit Strategy is the 4th installment in this series that is ongoing. It is the end of the first arc. And I truly believe that Martha Wells, if she had chosen to, could have ended the series after Exit Strategy. This series follows Murderbot, a semi-organic cyborg individual who has recently obtained free will. Free will has a lot of things that make it difficult to deal with because you have to make decisions for yourself. Murderbot makes friends and enemies, tackles conspiracies, beats up bad guys, but all he really wants to do is just stay home and watch his favorite TV shows. And that's just so relatable. I too don't want to tackle the chaos of the modern day. I just want to escape into a good story. And in that way, Murderbot's a very human character, a very human individual. And it's nice to watch Murderbot develop. Exit Strategy is so thrilling, and it really finishes the first arc of the series. And perhaps I'll change my opinion. Perhaps this won't be my favorite installment as the series progresses, and maybe I just view the first arc in a way that is overly positive because that arc is complete. The first 5 books of this series are all novellas. I think Exit Strategy is the best installment, but all of them are worth your time. And if you don't like to read, I don't know why you're watching this video if you don't like to read, but if you don't like to read, the TV show is pretty banging. So we're cracking into the top 5, and at the number 5 spot, we have Summer Frost by Blake Crouch. Blake Crouch is better known for his books Dark Matter and Recursion. I have not read those, but I love Summer Frost. This is a story about obsession, and it follows a game designer that becomes obsessed with one of the characters that he created. A character that inhabits this open world video game that everyone is playing, but it started acting erratically, and they quickly realize that it has obtained free will and has become a true artificial intelligence. And like every story focused on obsession, this book gets messy. This novella takes place over many years, and we get to see how this relationship forms, how our AI and our scientists grow, and it's not very pretty. This novella is like Free Guy with some horror elements. It was engaging, the pacing was breakneck. Blake Crouch covers a lot of ground in a very small amount of pages. I love the climax. I love how the tension kept building. There's a reason why Blake Crouch is one of the best thriller writers in the world today. If you're not reading Blake Crouch, you're missing out on some good, thrilling reads. At the number 4 spot, we have Ogres by Adrian Tchaikovsky. We have another Tchaikovsky on this list. He's my most widely read science fiction author, and Ogres, I feel, is the strongest book I've read from him. It's a novella that takes place in a dystopian future where humanity is ruled by an overclass of monstrous individuals known as ogres. Ogres are bigger than you, they are stronger than you, they rule the world. And when I say you, I mean you, because this novella is written in the second person. And that's a very hard, difficult thing to pull off. But it makes all the emotional beats of the story hit particularly hard because it's happening to you, the viewer, to you, the reader, and you go on a pretty epic adventure. The plot takes a lot of twists and turns. I loved me in this book, let me tell you. We, you, I go on this grand adventure, and the climax is chef's kiss. I think about this book at least once a week. Adrian Tchaikovsky, I have to gush about him a little bit because he is an author that it feels so good to be a fan of. He writes several books a year. All of them are above average in quality. I guess if there's one negative about him, it's that maybe he writes a little too much. Maybe some of his books that are just good could have been great if he just focused on one at a time. But I'm just so glad to have an author that I'm following where it would take me years to get through his backlog. And by the time he's done, he'll have easily over 100 books published. At the number 3 spot, we have a classic, what many people consider to be one of the first works of science fiction ever. And of course, I'm talking about Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. There is a reason why this book is still talked about today. There's a reason why it is timeless. I'm pretty sure you've heard of it. It follows Dr. Victor Frankenstein, a scientist that is obsessed with forbidden knowledge. He creates a monster, a creature we are incapable of understanding, a creature that is just thrown into the world. And in doing so, Victor Frankenstein in many ways becomes a monster himself because he creates something that is terrifying. What follows is a multi-year game of cat and mouse. And this book goes to some very introspective, philosophical, dark places. It's crazy to me that Mary Shelley wrote this book during a writing challenge amongst friends that is still relevant today. It's really something special. Frankenstein's monster is one of the most memorable characters in all of literatures. His monologues are legendary. When the monster speaks, I highlight the passage and I think about it for years. If you've ever felt alone or abandoned in this world, I think you'll find a lot of things that resonate with you when you relate yourself to the monster. That's my favorite part of this book, is the creature, is the monster, because I relate to him. I too was born into this world. We're all born into this world. We're all here on this planet. We exist for better and for worse. We go through hardships. We experience great tragedies and great triumphs, and life gets messy. And the monster explains and depicts that in a way that is just so visceral. And when I read this book 9 years ago, it really just changed the way I view things. And it's one of those books that truly stays with you. There's a reason why we're still making adaptations about it. There's a reason why this book has influenced pop culture so much. It's timeless. If you somehow manage to not read this book in your life, whether it be in school or in your free time, I think you're missing out if you haven't read it. At the number 2 spot, my silver medalists, we have The Ferryman by Justin Cronin. I know that objectively speaking, this book does not belong in the number 2 spot, but my subjective experience of this read is the reason why it is ranked so highly. This is a convoluted sci-fi thriller that takes place on a utopian island nation secluded from everywhere else on the planet. This society has some futuristic elements, like everyone has a computer that's embedded in their arm. Think like a Pip-Boy from Fallout. And on this computer, it has your life points. It tells you when you're getting old, when you're getting unhealthy. It has your health bar. And when that health bar gets low, you are taken to a recycling plant of sorts where you are recycled and reborn into a new body. Allegedly. We follow a ferryman, one of the individuals that is tasked with ferrying people to this center to be recycled. And things get messy when someone near and dear to him has reached the point in their life where it's time for them to be reborn. You know the drill. Things are not what they seem. Things get complicated and messy. The plot takes some interesting twists and turns, and I absolutely loved it. This book is very polarizing on the internet. A lot of people found it very hard to follow, but I was just so immersed in the read. And even when the plot went in directions I didn't quite understand, I just stayed focused on the task. And upon completing the story, I just felt such a strong sense of catharsis. It's a bittersweet story filled with loss and love and sacrifice, and it just shows how much we're willing to move the world to protect those we love. I mentioned earlier how there are books that are objectively better on this list, and I know that they are objectively better. But let me just tell you that there is an emotional plot point at the center of this story that just had me so enamored. It captured me and it never let go. The ending of this book is polarizing. A lot of people don't like it, a lot of people love it. I'm one of those that love the way this book ended. It's a sci-fi thriller that goes in a very interesting introspective direction, and there's a very noticeable tone and pace shift towards the end. It's hard for me to put into words why I love this book so much, but I don't care if it's polarizing. I adore it. And finally, at the number one spot, my favorite science fiction book of all time, Flowers for Algernon. Let me tell you, this is just one of those books that when you read it, it will make you cry. It'll take you to dark, introspective places. This book made me uncomfortable. It made me feel constantly unsettled. It made me view the world and certain people in it in a different way. It caused me to grow. There's a reason why this classic is still talked about today. It tells the story of a man who suffers from a lot of mental disabilities, and he goes through an experimental procedure that'll make him a genius. The book is told through journal entries, and we get to see our main character grow more and more intelligent as the story progresses. But ignorance is bliss, and sometimes greater knowledge leads to greater heartbreak. It leads to greater capacity to feel pain. This book did a very good job at depicting how oftentimes us normal people in society dehumanize those that exist on the margins. We dehumanize and objectify people that we think are lesser. And this book really just shone a mirror on me. It made me realize I was viewing people as less than. And I had such a visceral response to this book, and I felt shamed and humbled. If you have not read Flowers for Algernon, when the story takes a turn towards the halfway point, you are just filled with so much emotions, dread, fear, anxiety. I think one reason why this book is just such a perfect book for me is because when I was younger, I was very much behind my peers. I thought I was stupid, and I was afraid I would never catch up. And now as an adult, I my job is a job where brain trauma is very common, fairly common. And one of my worst fears is being dumb. One of my worst fears is losing part of what makes me me. One of my worst fears is losing some of my mental capacity. And I know eventually that goes with age to some extent, but it's a terrifying thing. It's the most terrifying thing that I think a lot of us fear. And this book will make you think about those who are suffering from disabilities and weaknesses and complications in life. And it will make you see the nobility in those individuals. This is truly one of those books that will change you once you read it. I've never met anyone that's read this book and was not emotionally changed. Safe to say, I have a lot of strong feelings about this book. But what surprises me is that many people who've read the original short story that this novel is based off of say that the short story is even better. And I will definitely be reading the short story version of Flowers for Algernon in 2026 because it's my favorite science fiction book of all time. It's a classic, perhaps it's a little bit of a basic choice, but dang it, this book is a masterpiece. So there you have it, Those are my top 10 favorite works of science fiction of all time as of this year, 2025. I imagine that this list will change a little bit next year because one of my main focuses for 2026 is to read a lot more science fiction. And I'm just excited to encounter some great new literary journeys. I'm excited to see what the stories have in store for me. Thank you guys for watching. Drop your favorite science fiction books in the comments below. Perhaps recommend me some books again. Push that thumbs up button if you like the video. I'd really appreciate it. And I'll talk to you guys next time.